Oh, hey, how are you? Great to hear. Yeah, come in. Make yourself comfortable. Like a drink? Sure. There you go. Welcome to the Tech Lounge. Shall we begin? Welcome to the Tech Lounge with me, Chris Chinchilla. This is a interview roundup episode. I'm going to combine two interviews. Firstly, because I have such a backlog. Some of them are recorded so long ago, I really want to start solving that problem. So I'm putting two interviews together. These are both from Web Summit last November 2024. Feels like it was a long time ago. A little bit different from each other. One is with Corynne from the Electronics Frontier Foundation, and one is with Nick from Harness, who, whilst I was just looking up, seems like I interviewed before in 2021, but I do not remember it. So I don't know what happened to that. Anyway, yes, two interesting, one's an organization, one's a company, covering very different sorts of topics, recorded live at Web Summit. Audio quality varies, as always. Done my best to clean them up. Enjoy those two interviews. But before we begin, just some words from sponsors. Git is an essential tool and workflow for almost any developer in the world these days, and Git can be easy for some but hard for others. And I've always been a fan of Git graphical tools, Git GUIs that help me and could help you understand some of those more esoteric commands or just speed up what you do on a regular basis. Tower is perhaps one of the oldest and preeminent and best known Mac and Windows Git GUIs. And if you want to get 25% off their full price tool, then head on over to go.christianchiller.com/tower.
But now you already know what I think about everything.
Well, how you think about something.
Yeah.
Not necessarily what I wanted to talk about.
No, that's totally fine, of course.
Although, I don't know, there's two topics that are hard to avoid, but
it is
I'm going to try my best.
No, it's true. Yes.
Maybe just a little higher.
A little higher? Sure.
Just, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm experimenting. You can record onto them, but it marks all the timestamps as the beginning of Unix time in 1970. So I get to them months later. I have no idea what they are. So
that's amazing. I could put it here too. Is that better?
No, it's fine.
We're good.
So I'm going to record it into my phone this time, so at least I can see the timestamp and then figure out who it was I spoke to. So
sounds good.
Corynne McSherry. Okay, Corynne.
Okay.
Corynne.
Mm-hmm.
I keep wanting to pronounce it a different way.
That's all right. Everybody does.
EFF, Electronics Frontier Foundation. Yes?
It's the Electronic Frontier Foundation.
All right.
It's all right.
Sort of feel like it could be either. But anyway, that's it's sort of fairly well known in certain circles, but for people who don't know what it is,
Sure.
Let's quickly do a summary of what the foundation is and then what they do and why.
Yeah, sure. So we are a digital rights organization. We're a group of a whole bunch of lawyers and technologists and activists, and we focus on protecting digital liberties, basically making sure that technology serves justice and innovation and creativity and does not thwart it.
And it's about a couple of decades, is it? Or
we've been around since 1990.
Yeah. Okay. So
yeah,
what is that? That's 30. Yes, 30 years.
And
what was the origin story? Why found it in the first place?
Well, the origin story is actually kind of interesting. Our founders basically got wind of the FBI was going after a technologist, a hacker, but because they thought that that person was involved in something actually pretty nefarious. And via an old email, was even actually pre-email platform called The Well. Anyway, we can save that for later. But, so our three founders got wind of it and said, we need to help this guy because what was happening is the FBI just didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
They were just confused. And they realized like, this is going to happen a lot.
Yeah.
We're going to have government officials. We're going to have judges. We're going to have all kinds of policymakers who are going to make bad decisions that will be bad for technology and bad for freedom, partly because they just don't understand the technology. So so we've sort of been speaking tech to power our whole organization's existence. But now, of course, the project has gotten a lot bigger than it used to be.
And from memory, there was a European one? Because I think I was a member of it for a period of time. I think it was.
So there is sort of an EFF Finland, but they're not really affiliated with us. We have a team in that operates in Europe.
I feel like I was a member of someone based about 5 minutes down the road from me in Berlin at some point, but I can't.
Well, we have sister organizations in lots of places, and then also we have a team that works in Europe. We're small but mighty.
Just Europe, or also?
So we have some folks based in Latin America.
Okay.
We got folks in the EU and the UK. And what we do in that case, especially, is that we look for partners. Like, we don't really think that outside of the United States, policymakers and judges don't necessarily want an American organization to tell them what to think, right? Understandably, it's fine. But we do feel like we can contribute things. So we'll sort of say, well, look, let us share with you what our experience has been, what we have learned about similar kinds of proposals that we've seen in the United States, for example. But we do that by partnering with other organizations on the ground. And, I think that's a lot more effective than trying to come in.
I can't remember who I was a member of then. I don't know. It was the Software Freedom Foundation.
Oh, Software Freedom Foundation. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's what it was.
Yes, they're
FSF,
great.
That was the one.
They are great. They do good work.
Yeah. And you said tends to be probably a mixture of lawyers and activists, and I guess some technologists to meet that, especially on the lawyer side.
Yes.
Is everybody full-time involved, or are they sort of affiliated, associated, or a mixture of those?
Most of us are full-time lawyers.
Okay.
So I'm the legal director, so it's my team. And so we have, I think we're up to 25 people now. We also have a couple volunteer lawyers that we sort of partner with. And we also often work with private law firms in our litigation. We might team up with a private law firm to handle some of the parts of the litigation. So we bring cases ourselves. Sometimes we partner up, but by partnering up, we can sort of expand our reach and our influence.
So is it generally reactionary, or do you also try to do kind of awareness raising campaigns? Or probably the answer is both.
Well, it is both. So we do sort of affirmative litigation where we're looking for a case because what we focus on is what's called impact litigation. And what that means is that we're trying to bring cases to set new precedents. To either change the law for the better, or defend it so it doesn't get worse when someone's making a bad proposal that we think is dangerous for the users, because that's where we focus, right? We fight for the user. That is our job. We do not fight for Google. And we don't fight for. We'll fight for a startup, but usually if we see a smaller company, we think they're trying to do something that's giving users a good alternative. We want people to have alternatives that are more privacy protecting. But at the same time, a thing that when I started at EFF 20 years ago, we only did litigation. We didn't do lobbying. We didn't do that kind of work.
Just to clarify for people who aren't so familiar with the American legal system, which includes me.
Sure. Sorry.
What is litigation? That's
So litigation means we go to court.
All right. Okay. And
it can involve representing clients. Sometimes it is filing a friend of the court brief.
Okay.
Where we think we have can help the judge make a better decision.
Okay.
And we have something unique to contribute with. That's a lot of our early days. We did that because we were really explaining technology to the court, so they would make a good decision.
Probably still are.
Yeah. So when I say litigation, that's what I mean.
Okay.
And then the other part of what we can do is sort of more policy work, and that may involve going to DC or going to state legislatures or Congress and saying, that's a bad idea. Don't support that bad idea. Or here's a better idea. Do this. Like one of the things we've been pushing recently is you can solve a lot of problems on the internet with comprehensive privacy protections. and start there and do that first, and then we'll see what's left. And then the other thing that we do is we have a team of activists.
Okay. Yeah.
And so the lawyers sort of focus on understanding the law, analyzing it, and explaining it to various audiences. The activists are really focused on sort of getting the word out, mobilizing people, and saying like, are you upset about this? Here's something you can do, and providing ways for people to take action. And also sometimes taking the legalese and translating it for humans. We try to, as lawyers, like one of the jobs of an EFF lawyer is to not talk like a lawyer all the time, like speak like a human.
Sometimes you have to, don't you? The law does it sometimes intentionally, doesn't it? So
sometimes we need translators. And so the activists will help with that.
Before we get to the sort of present day, going back through that 30-year history, are there any particular campaigns or cases that either you think people would be most aware of or that the organization is most proud of?
Oh, gosh, there's lots. There's one that it's about a decade ago now, but it was pretty important, which was mobilizing people to stop SOPA PIPA, which and that was sort of the internet blackout. Yeah. People might remember that.
Yeah.
We were a leader of that. 2012.
Really?
Yeah, I know. I just looked it up. And yes, that was a while ago now. But actually a lot of those ideas are coming back recently. So we'll be doing that same fight again. And there's really a lot of ways in which, in the name of copyright protection, people are really comfortable with just splintering the internet, and that is not going to be great in the long run. In ways that you really have to explain to lawmakers. And the other thing that we were really proud of was net neutrality. So we got net neutrality protections, which was a huge campaign. And it wasn't just us, right? We work with allies. You can't be effective if we don't work all together. But we've been pretty good at...
And this is the concept, I think, in the States of making all traffic equal kind of thing?
It's that ISPs,
I hear it all the time on American tech shows without ever fully understanding.
Oh, good. Well, let me explain it. Everyone hates the term, but it's the term that got adopted, and it's all Tim Wu's fault, and so there it is. He's apologized many times. But it is that the basic, basic infrastructure of the internet, those providers should treat all of the data more or less equally. And because there is a strong impetus, and they've said this many times, this is just internet access providers, just the people that let you hook in. And they would really like to charge companies extra to get access to you, their customers, to get better access to you, their customers. So that some apps will be super smooth and some will be kind of clunky. Yeah. Some streaming services will be super smooth and other ones will be kind of clunky. The ones who can pay extra are going to be the ones that are going to work better.
It's kind of interesting because this is actually handled technically already. Last year, I spoke to someone from Fastly, CDM, and that's kind of what they're there for. There's technical ways of handling this without handling it financially and contractually.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, it's based a lot on one of the things that they will say to policymakers is they will say, oh, no, we have this problem. We can't possibly, it's the gamers. There's so much data we have to process for them. We should be able to charge more for that.
But they're probably paying more anyway.
Well, exactly. They're already paying you. Yeah. But they're like, why don't you pay us twice? Yeah. Why can't we make double money?
Yeah.
And the thing that's really frustrating is, at least in the United States, it's an oligopoly.
Yeah.
You don't have a choice of where to go. So you can't choose a provider that is more protective of you. And so you're stuck with however they want to treat you. If you want to get access to the internet, that's it.
It's not massively different in Germany. It's actually very similar with healthcare in Germany to the States. Like the comparison is they're not as good as you think, but they can't refuse you. It's the same with the telcos there. Like they're not necessarily, you don't necessarily have any more choice, but they're all the same price.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So it's not like it matters. There's no real competition between them, which is good and bad.
But the thing is, from the customer's perspective, you won't see it necessarily in your internet account. You won't have to pay more.
Yeah.
But companies will have to pay more to get to you in an effective way.
Yeah.
So if I'm a gaming company, say, and I want or streaming is actually easier.
Yep.
And I want mine, to go run smoothly so that I can get more views and so on. There's another company with more money, and they are paying more to get smoother, no throttling.
So Apple TV is going to be better than Mubi,
Right.
for example.
Yeah. And so the company that can pay to be supercharged is going to be supercharged. You as a user, you won't necessarily know any of this
You'll blame
stuff.
the company.
You'll just, you will blame the company.
Yeah.
And so then we're not going to have competitive alternatives.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm going to say let's start in the past sort of 2 years, because I think that's when some of the major recent changes online have come. What are current campaigns or policy pillars, shall we say?
Well, a thing that's happening and still looming that we are very concerned about are bills in the United States and in other countries. We've seen them too, where there's going to be a lot of efforts to police the internet or require intermediaries to police the internet, service providers platforms, big and small, to police the content that they host. And it's always in the name of protecting the children.
Yeah.
But a lot of the proposals that we have seen have very, very, very just fundamental flaws that will be impossible to implement without basically creating a situation which all of us only get to view the content that an attorney general in the state of Alabama has deemed acceptable for 13-year-olds. Because that's how they get enforced. So you create a situation where a state attorneys general can decide that X content that's being hosted on your platform is dangerous for kids, and so they have the ability to sue you, or the FTC has the ability to go after you for hosting that content if these laws pass. They aren't passed yet, because they think it's dangerous. But what is dangerous can be wildly variable. There are many places, as you may know, in the United States where they think information about trans healthcare is dangerous for children. So, and companies are just not going to want to get involved in that litigation. And so they will just basically over-censor. They'll just take down everything because that is cheaper than getting in a fight with the FTC, with the federal government.
Yeah. I'm a British and Australian citizen, which are both countries that are attempting
UK
to
online safety bill.
Well, they've been talking about it for ages, and now Australia's bringing in this sort of youth filter for social media.
Yes. I was just talking to someone about that.
Yeah, both countries have been talking about it for some time, but it's always for the children, which...
And people will vote for it if it's for the children.
Yeah, I mean, until those children are adults, of course.
Well,
maybe it changed their mind.
It also doesn't seem to work particularly well, and
because it's usually proposed by people who don't fully understand how it works.
Right, and there are a lot of. I mean, you think there's AI snake oil? There's so much snake oil in this area where people will come. I've been on panels where people will come and tell Congress, "I have the solution for this. Yeah. There is solutions to this," and guess what? I'm the one who sells it. Yeah. So everybody adopt mine.
Yeah. And most activists know there's usually ways around it.
Yeah, of course there are, but not everybody who's going to need access is going to know that, you know.
Children can be pretty
that's true.
Pretty resourceful as well.
We will try to have faith in the children.
But I mean, how does an organization like the EFF straddle that the balance of freedom versus kind of well-meaning, genuine concern?
Yeah. So it's not a new problem. It's not a new challenge. And because I want to be clear, I think many of the advocates that I disagree with profoundly in terms of their policy proposals, I don't think they're ill-intentioned.
No,
I think some people are, but mostly I don't think so. I think they care deeply and they have horrific stories that I believe completely to be true. So then when we're in that situation, what we have to do is try to explain to them, and we have to explain to policymakers, this is why this is a bad idea. Yeah. And sometimes you have to do it many, many times. Like a proposal will come back every year and you have to go again and you have to say, this is why it's not going to do what you think it's going to do. Yeah. It's going to cause all kinds of collateral damage. It's unconstitutional. So usually our next step, if it passes, is then we go to court. Right? We have two different options: fight it here, fight it there. But we'd rather, rather sort of win people over and help them understand. I realize our discourse is not great in the United States right now. There's a lot of division.
We'll come back to that in a second.
There are still places where you can have reasonable conversations with reasonable people and say, we're trying to help you understand. And a lot of times, my experience is in lobbying, I mean, I'm more of a litigator than a lobbyist,
Yeah.
but when I meet with staffers, they're super busy. They have, a million things that they have to wrap their heads around.
And offering to help
every
is
day.
actually
And
often
yeah,
welcome. Yeah.
I mean, the first time I went to DC, this was many years ago to meet with staffers, and I realized I came back to San Francisco where we were based. It's like, they just give you homework. It's like every time I go to DC, I come home, I have homework. But the homework, because what they mean is, please give us more information about this. And you have to put things together and send it to them. But they really do need that because they don't have time. They have too much on their plates.
Yeah.
They're very badly paid, and they really actually would like to get the answer right. So we just try to use our EFF focuses very hard on being the experts in the room.
Yeah.
If we publish something on our blog, if we put something, even when we were we still tweet, but whatever we say publicly, we stand behind.
Okay.
And if we're wrong, we'll say that publicly.
Yeah.
But like the lawyers will talk to the technologists and vice versa. We will make sure that what we say hopefully is understandable, but it's also true. Like, we're not going to just publish something to get people excited. We're going to be like, this is the truth.
Especially because you're probably dealing with topics that will not be that exciting to a lot of people.
For some people, it's not very exciting, but it's sort of, and it is the kind of thing where, it takes, we've 30 years of building that reputation. You can lose it really in like a second.
Yeah, for sure. With losing credibility or, I understand. It's very easy to accidentally take a turn that could take years to undo. Yeah. Okay, let's end with two final topics that I think it's hard to avoid. Let's firstly talk about I'm going to use the correct terminology, the current wave of AI. Is the EFF involved in any way, shape or form with helping, copyright, content, attribution, that kind of thing, or just leaving that to other people?
So we think that actually copyright law is handling generative AI just fine. I think there's a lot of what people are suing over that I think is protected by fair use, the training of it.
Yep.
I also think, though, that if somebody generates something that is, a copy of a work that you own, you can and should be able to sue over that, and that's perfectly fine. I'm not sure you should be able to sue the tools. Like, we worry about that because we tend to think that litigating a general purpose tool out of existence is not it's not the right path forward.
No.
So we also think that, or a concern that we have is that there is so much attention being paid to generative AI. And I'm not saying that it's not important to pay attention to, but to the extent that it's distracting from sort of already existing harms, it's very frustrating. It's like we have decades of research saying that algorithmic decision-making with respect to, facial recognition or housing.
It's nothing new,
a lot of it's sort of, when people talk, so it's like all of a sudden we have like all this energy in Congress about policing generative AI and new regulations. You think, could you take some of that energy and focus it on how we're already using AI in housing decisions in ways that are really harmful to people? So I cannot resist. Every time I talk about the current wave of AI, I try to use it to remind people of the other stuff.
And I was taught AI subjects in university 20 years ago by professors who learned in the 70s. It's been here a long time, kids.
Yes, it is.
Just the speed and scale has changed,
That's
as always
true.
with technology. And the final one is, I don't really want to dig into too much detail on it, but with the change in government in the US, and I'll be pragmatic, you've been around for 30 years. Most governments are not around that long in the grand scheme of an organization like yourselves. I'm more interested in knowing in terms of how an organization that I'm guessing is mostly donation funded sort of sustains itself and keeps going in times when they're probably a little more opposed to you, maybe. How do you keep sustaining yourself and work with a government that maybe is less interested in hearing from you?
So here's what we do. Well, for one thing is we are and always have been completely nonpartisan. And we really
have to be,
but that actually matters because when we go to DC, we can actually meet with everybody. And because of that, because there's two things. One is we've seen lots of different administrations, and
Exactly.
different parties often will still do the same terrible thing that we don't like.
Yeah.
There was mass surveillance under Democrats and
Yeah,
under
yeah,
Republicans.
yeah.
Okay. So we try to focus on what's the policy, if we and how is it being enforced? That's what we're going to focus on. And if we object to the policy, we're going to say so, and we're going to push against it. And I think our supporters understand that and get that and appreciate that. So we have a lot of problems with the Biden administration. We have a lot of problems with Obama. And then there are other things that we thought was really good. I do think that under the Biden administration, for example, we've seen a lot more antitrust enforcement that I think has been valuable and important. And I suspect we'll see less of that in the coming administration.
Yeah.
So that will be a change. It's not like there aren't any differences. No. But in terms of a lot of the things that we work on, they're just genuinely not partisan topics.
No.
There's when we work on online expression, there are plenty of people on both parties. We only have two, as you know, and they in theory we have three, but really, but we really only have two, and who advance arguments and policies that we think are just fundamentally wrong. And at the same time, we have allies, people who are like advancing policies that we think are really smart, again, on both sides of the aisle. So this isn't just rhetoric, it's just as a practical matter. I mean, I've been in the EFF for 20 years and I just see it. I see who we've worked with. I see who I talk to.
Yeah.
There are times we have to shift gears a little bit. So for example, we're in a period right now where with our litigation, where we go to court, federal courts with the current set of judges might not be as open to some of the arguments that we make. There's been new interpretations of the Constitution. We have to shift with that. We have to figure out, okay, so given that, but at the same time, there may be that we can go to the states and litigate in state courts in states like California that might, but not just, this is not just a red state thing. It's like, we'll look and sort of see, like in the California, there's a California Constitution that actually has more protections for privacy and speech than the U.S. Constitution does.
Because a lot of tech companies go through the one in Texas, don't they? I think. For
patents, they love Texas.
Yeah.
But so we'll look at a state and say this state's constitution actually has some things that we can work with. Again, because we think we're trying to advance free speech. So maybe, and if we can get a good decision out of a high court in a big state like California, well, that's 40 million people.
Yeah, true.
And that also can be influential in other states. So that's just one example of how we will, we adjust our strategies according to what we think is going to work in a given moment.
Any activist organization always has to do. So, okay, I'm going to ask one more question. There's no one there.
That's fine. No problem.
Just on that, and obviously, you want to remain bipartisan, and you don't have to give me any opinions on what these people believe. But in the incoming administration, there's likely to be a handful of people who've been involved in tech for some time, whether we like them or not, or whether the organization, people like what they represent or not, they are informed on technology. Do you think that will make your job easier or harder, or likely both? But
I sort of think both, but here's why. One of the things that that has happened in literally the past 4 years and a little bit before is the U.S. government, including on the Congress side, has staffed up on tech much better than they used to. So it's a better situation because for years we're in despair. They have a much better set of technologists on staff in the White House, in Congress, in all the agencies than they used to. And so having more tech knowledge actually is genuinely helpful. But I don't think it's going to be as much of a change as I think that we're going to see some other changes. But I don't know that that's going to be the big one for us.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, no problem.
I have been talking about and using Raycast almost since it began. It's a drop-in replacement for tools like Alfred and Spotlight, letting you do all sorts of productivity hacks such as opening applications, triggering commands, window resizing, and through a broad plugin ecosystem, all sorts of other things too. Some of my favorites are HomeKit devices, triggering shortcuts, and screen layouts, and also creating Trello cards because I happen to maintain that extension, actually. Raycast has a pro feature, lets you do all sorts of other things, including a lot of AI features and the ability to share workflows amongst other team members. So if you're interested in finding out more, getting a discount on a pro plan, and of course, earning a little bit for the show, then head on over to go.christianchiller.com/Raycast.
That's perfect. That's awesome. But it's not quite the app. Well, it's, I don't know. It probably won't even pick it up. So.
What's it? Let's see if it's. No, I think you're picking up mostly us. I'm watching
I have perfected the art of sound reducing, noise reducing.
Yeah, you can cut them, absolutely.
It gets a bit like artifacty, but this is okay when it's like this. It's like some of the events you go to where there's always someone slamming a door or something. That's actually the worst.
Those are hard. Yeah, those you can.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
So, Nick,
Yes.
I feel like the name Harness has been around for a little while. I don't know where I first heard it, but for someone who hasn't heard of Harness.io, what is Harness?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, look, Harness is the modern software delivery platform. 8 years ago when we started, we brought AI to continuous delivery. We started as the world's first continuous delivery as a service platform.
Okay.
And we grew because our customers required it. We thought like CI was solved, like the build phase was solved.
Yeah.
We thought the biggest problem was artifact to customer, and that's what we built first. And we grew such an amazing set of customers and solving so many problems. All of our customers had said, ooh, CI isn't solved. Feature flagging isn't solved. Security testing isn't solved. And so can you help us do this in an audited, governed, compliant, like secure fashion so that we know it's easy to do the right things and it's hard to do the wrong things?
So just to understand, I mean, 8 years, it's hard to think sometimes because 8 years feels like a long time ago, but maybe it really isn't. I'm sure there were platforms and tools that existed that did continuous delivery and feature flags. Was it just that Harness was the first to kind of tie them together? Or?
Yeah, look, 8 years ago you had Jenkins,
Yeah.
you had Circle CI, you had GitLab that you could have on premise, and so it wasn't software as a service, it wasn't a platform handling it for you, and it was still always scripts. And even today, a lot of the CI, so the build vendors will say, oh, we do continuous delivery. What they mean is that they allow you to write your own scripts to do delivery, and we really wanted to solve it in a way that was where you don't have to, your engineers don't have to spend any time, energy, or effort thinking about how to do complex deployments, a canary, a blue-green. They don't have to care whether it's on Amazon today, Azure tomorrow, Google Next, back to your data center. It doesn't matter if it's Tomcat or if it's containerized, if it's cloud native, your engineers shouldn't have to care. And that was where we wanted to. We wanted to, again, remove the worst part of the job so that they could do what they're best at.
Yeah. Would it be fair to say that Harness then was, now this term has kind of been popularized, and I know the company that popularized it. This whole kind of like platform team, developer platform. Is it fair to say that Harness was doing that before that sort of existed as a term? Or?
I think, we've seen the terms, whether it's DevOps, whether it's, SRE, platform engineering, like they all have boundaries that they meet. And I think one of the things that was important, and I think it's unique, is that what we tried to do is actually empower all of the teams to work together in a platform and not necessarily have the platform engineering team be the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is security teams, empower them to write policy and governance and security rules to make sure that I know what we're playing by. Allow the infrastructure teams to define the infrastructure that we can deploy to. Allow the DevOps team to write the pipelines that get you to production. And then as an engineer, as a developer, I shouldn't have to care about any of that. Like, I don't care what the platform is, Harness or not. I don't want to see the platform unless something goes wrong. Yeah. And so the whole goal was to actually create harmony amongst all those teams. I know that's somewhat altruistic in its idea, but that's really the point.
That time. Yesterday I was speaking to the guy from class. That was where my stomach was always started. Just like, ended it, please. So, yeah. So it is always, I think, too, when a company has been around in a space for quote unquote a while. I mean, 8 years in tech is
It's a while.
It's a little while. Firstly, at the beginning of the journey, what was the motivation to create the company and the product in the first place? What was the pain point that someone was trying to solve, etc., that made them want to come up with this slightly new idea?
Sure. So Jyoti, one of our founders, he had founded AppDynamics.
Oh, okay.
And when he sold AppDynamics to Cisco, he asked all of his executives he's working with, what's your next biggest problem? What's the burning issue? And it wasn't the builds, it wasn't the source code, right? It was actually, how do we get things deployed?
Yeah.
You know, because everybody thought they were unique, they thought they were Snowflake in how they did it. And if we could solve that problem, I don't want to get the quote wrong, but I think Barclays said 700 DevOps engineers. So those are the people just making sure that whatever was written gets to production.
Who did that?
Barclays Bank.
Oh, Barclays. Okay, yeah.
And
My
so
dad actually used to work for them many years ago.
Yeah, and this was the problem, is like there's just massive amount of toil, you know, people babysitting deployments, waiting for test run, all these things, versus actually driving value for the business. And so that's what started it. And really, it comes down to what we're trying to solve for. Is there's 30 million developers in the world, and how can we make them more efficient? How can we make them faster? How can we make them more reliable in what the code that comes out, so that they can do what they're best at, not the rest of the things. And that's really what we focused our entire world around. That's everything that we do. Every module we build in the platform is designed to remove somebody's worst part of the job.
Yeah.
I don't want to wait. Like, if I have 1,000 or 10,000 unit tests, like if I had 50 lines of code, I have to run through all 10,000 of those. Why would I do that? So we built tooling so that it'll go figure out the code, the tests you need to run. Now only run 10% of those. So save you time in your builds. I don't want to babysit deployments. So I don't want to sit there and look at all the metrics and all the logs and understand, is this good? So we'll run continuous verification for you. I don't want to turn on and off my non-production infrastructure to save cost, and I don't want to sit on a schedule where I can't get to when I don't need it. So why don't we automate that? So it's everything that we build, we figure out what's the worst part of someone's job, and we remove it for them.
So was this probably at the time, you called it machine learning, not AI, because that's what people used to call these things until the past couple of years. But was that the machine learning part?
Yeah.
In that you don't actually have to know exactly how to do this. We will look at the code, the usage levels, and kind of extrapolate for you, and then maybe give you like editorial privileges over that.
So we came out almost 8 years ago now, and the announcement was Harness is the first one to bring AI to software
you
delivery.
Use that word.
Yeah, and we did because so I started building neural networks for the banks to try to determine a lot of fraud, fraud prevention, data aggregation, different things. And so we leveraged some of those, and sure, you could have those like static thresholds, but if I'm looking and I put a static threshold, hey, okay, does this happen under 60 millis? Great. If it doesn't, alert me. What if you get better and better and better, and now you're down to 20 millis? I don't want to wait to 3x my latency. So we wanted to build something that could actually learn and understand how your applications are going the same way your best engineers could. I'll give you a very succinct example. Your best engineer can look at the logs and go, oh, there's a null pointer exception, but that one's okay because we see it every single time we deploy it. But a new engineer will be like, oh, there's an NPE, I got to fix it. We built artificial intelligence, we built neural networks, we built clustering to understand that so that we could just note, hey, by the way, yes, that's a null pointer exception, but you don't have to worry about it because it's there every single time you deploy. Here's the new things. So kind of get rid of the noise and bring it to the system.
On a slight tangent, and if you don't want to answer this, it's totally fine, but I saw that I think you were also now down as an advisor for OverOps.
So I was originally
from memory they did something similar.
So interestingly enough, and Harness even bought OverOps. So I left.
That explains why I haven't seen them for a while.
so the reason you haven't seen them is we bought them. So it's now our continuous error tracking. And at OverOps, and again, I was the first sales engineer there. I helped build the team there. I left there to come to Harness. I left OverOps to come there. But when it was an opportunity to purchase them, it was absolutely something I'm extremely passionate about, because again, we're getting deeper. You're getting the source code, the stack trace, and the variable state of what you needed. And so niche in the sense of like, is it Java, is it .NET, are you having these problems in production? But bringing that worst part of the job, sifting through that, trying to recreate the error, again, remove the worst part of someone's job.
It's funny when I saw that on your profile. I met them ages ago in Tel Aviv.
Oh, it was probably Tal Weiss on the team over there. Yep.
And I actually did some technical blogs for them a couple of times. It was like, I don't see that name for a while.
Yep. So we were happy to acquire them, give them a great place to land, retain most of the engineers, and that was, we shared a lot of the same customers.
Yeah.
So if you look at our large financial customers, they were very similar.
Yeah. Okay. Then coming forward
Yep.
in the journey, now we're at a point where there are, Harness is fairly well known, but in feature flagging, there are companies that are better known.
100%.
In continuous delivery, there are companies that are better known. In platform engineering, there are companies that are better known,
Absolutely.
et cetera, et cetera. Even in the AI infrastructure space, there's a couple of people emerging, maybe not as well known, but emerging. So how do you keep kind of your head above these, sometimes being one of the first movers, you sort of get pushed down the list of it sometimes from all these new arrivals.
Sure.
How do you keep up with that?
Yeah, this could take a little bit to answer, so I'm going to do it in a few phases because it's important and I think it's neat. So one of the goals is so we build a modular platform. So our platform itself holds all the things you want. So your RBAC, your policy engine that actually governs everything. So you can put policy on everything, prevent people from doing those bad things. The reporting engine, the scalability of the platform to handle trillions of executions, right? Those types of things. So that's all they're part of the platform. But then each module we actually create operates as a startup and a startup. And so to your point, our goal is any module we build, 2 years after its inception, when we first come to market, our goal is to be the top 1 or 2 in the market. Okay. Now, let me give you some examples of that. So to your point, in the feature flagging space, Launch Darkly was number 1. Split was number 2. And we ended up, after a year and a half, we actually became number 3 in that market in a very short period of time. We weren't happy with that. That wasn't enough. So we actually acquired Split to make that part of it. So we took our pipelining, our RBAC, our enterprise governance ability, and then added that to their feature management and experimentation. So now you get the best of both worlds. You get that continuous verification style that we do, but they're now doing with your feature flag. So when you flip a feature flag, they're actually looking, how is this actually adjusting your revenue, or like what the performance gains are, so you can do it quickly. And then on top of that, you can add pipelining. So now you can prevent things like people saw at Night Capital. If you haven't seen this one, you should research it. Night Capital used to own 18% of the NASDAQ. They flipped the wrong feature flag. It didn't work. Their quant machines fought each other, and they bankrupted a company in 4 hours. If you had our policy engine, which would have gone and tested it, made sure that they're all at the right place, made sure that you can't flip a flag that's in production that hasn't been tested in a lower environment, in a QA environment, all that would have been prevented. So we're adding those types of things to it. So to your point, and to get back to your question, we want to be in the top 1 or 2 in the market for any of those. And so a lot of people say, there's a ton of other continuous delivery tools. And there's a lot of things people use, but what they are is actually extensions of CI tools, or extensions of build tools. So they're actually script runners. And we find it very unique that we think of things differently. CD, continuous delivery, shouldn't be scripts. In fact, you shouldn't have to care or want or know. And so when people come to us, is actually once they've tried it somewhere else and realize it doesn't scale, it's not auditable, they can't meet a compliance requirement, they can't put policy around it. Then when they realize that, they come to us. And this is the reason, if you look at like Citibank, they're now at 28,000 developers that can get an artifact to production in 7 minutes with Harness. So they choose, all right, here's the cool thing. They have a 130-page
28,000 developers?
28,000 developers. So they have a 130-page document which dictates how they can get to production. And they have 2 choices. Either A, you can read all of this and make sure your deployments work on this, or you can use a Harness pipeline, and that will guarantee all of those rules are met. So the only way you get there is if every rule is met. And so, again, people will try it on the open source, they'll try it on their CI tools, and then when they have a problem.
Okay. On that, I'm interested to understand what it looks like from a sort of developer, DevOps platform team experience. There are some established sort of open source and standard ways, Terraform scripts, YAML files, bunches of bundles of bash, whatever it may be. If I come to Harness, and maybe you have sort of sniffed out my ideal kind of setup for me, my pipelines great, but maybe I have legacy configuration that I want to bring in, or if I want to leave, I want to take harness configuration somewhere else. Like, do you follow any of those sort of more open, accepted standards, both? Or
Absolutely, and great question. Just so for those that can't see, I'm smiling ear to ear because this is what actually makes us successful. We integrate with all of the open source tooling, with all the open source projects, and I'll kind of list some examples, but we also integrate with all of our competitors. So there's an interesting one. Like when we say we are a platform for software delivery, the only way to truly be a platform is integrate with all of the tooling in the space, including all of our competitors.
Yeah.
And this is unique to us. Everybody else says we got a platform, but what they mean is as long as you stay in our ecosystem. The reason we got to 28,000 developers at Citibank was not because we told them tomorrow it has to be all in harness. It's because we integrated with their Terraform. Yeah. Because we integrate with their, maybe they're using Argo, right? That's actually native into the tooling of harness. And what we always do is when I talk about removing that worst part, if you're running Argo, that's great for telling you what is being deployed, how it's being deployed, and then also managing it across a massive amount of clusters becomes a challenge. So we'll allow you to still use your Argo, but yet we'll handle that portion for you. If you want to use Terraform or OpenTofu, for instance.
Cool, sorry.
So which we
takes
donated.
Getting used to remember.
But like we donated.
I even have a sticker for OpenTofu. I was there when they launched it at the Open Summit in Bilbao last year, and I still forget to.
So we dedicated 5 engineers to OpenTofu. We're one of the largest contributors, and right now we're even giving back all of the things that they held behind the enterprise license. So like, I want to keep everything encrypted at rest. That's now native to OpenTofu, where it wasn't a basic, open source Terraform. And so the point here is that we want to meet people where they're at. You want to meet the people that work in regulatory compliance. Great. Let me give you all the evidence in your ServiceNow ticket. I want to meet the developers where they're at, whether reporting back to their IDE or into their Jira ticket. So all the evidence of what we're doing and how it's there. But more importantly, when you want to use your tools, you want to use Helm, you want to use Argo, you have certain things you wrote in Ansible. Great. Let's continue to use those, but orchestrate them in an audited, compliant, secure pipeline that you can govern, you can make secure, you can make sure that, an example, a developer might have a security scan they have to do. And oftentimes if they can't pass it, they'll just remove the step. You can do that in Jenkins, you can do that in GitHub. Well, in Harness, you can write as a policy that says you can't remove it. Yeah. Not only can you not remove it, you have to actually, to go to production, you have to have no new criticals. Maybe you have some criticals that exist and security is okay with, but if you introduce a new one, right, you can't do it. Yeah. So those are the things that by integrating with all of the systems, and we started, pre-Kubernetes launch to power. So this is SSHing into Linux boxes, doing Tomcat,
Mesos.
WebSphere, WebLogic. Yeah, this is Mesos. When we were working with Twitter, it was, I think most of it was on Mesos.
Yeah.
We got folks that are using Swarm.
Oh.
I mean, like literally.
Still,
we still have people deploying on Swarm. OpenShift, OpenStack, Pivotal Cloud Foundry, or now what Tanzu. So, so now literally being able to support, what I always say is where you were, where you are, and where you're going. That's the important pieces. And that's actually what makes us unique. We're not built for just the modern technologies. We have banks that orchestrate us for their mainframes all the way through.
Yeah. Well, on the subject of where you're going.
Yes.
So Harness has been an AI-powered platform for a while. Yep. But now AI-powered means something different to a lot of people.
Yeah, it was predictive, now it's generative.
Yeah,
right?
So is Harness looking at that in any way, shape, or form? I have interviewed a couple of interesting companies that are looking at generating infrastructure from, instead of infrastructure as code as infrastructure, or doing a little bit of what you have been doing for a while of looking at an application and generating AWS setup from it and that kind of thing. Is there anything you're looking to do with that, or is it more that like we're already here doing this, we don't have to do anything new?
No, we're constantly adding new AI technologies, whether it be predictive modeling or generative modeling. Lately, it's been very generative. Okay. We, and I even just gave a talk here an hour or so ago, Web Summit. It was about the fact that a lot of people, in my opinion, done it wrong. So a lot of people, what they're creating in the Gen AI space is they're creating things that remove the best part of people's jobs. Like, oh great, developers love writing code and solving complex problems, so let me build something to do that.
Well, the classic extrapolating is I wanted AI to do my washing, so I could spend more time on art instead.
And yet it's doing the art and it's not solving the washing.
Yes.
And this was the problem, and you saw revolt amongst
Yeah.
developers. And so what we're actually creating are some of the neatest things that I've seen. And again, with that startup and a startup model, we can go get experts from those very specific areas, and then we can build teams around them. So I don't have to take team members from continuous delivery from CI to do new things. But we're building an agentic approach. So all of these will be agents to do very specific tasks. So whether it be, sure, the standard code gen pieces, but we're focusing more on the explainability, the test writing, the documentation writing. Sure, there's code completion things, but we're really focusing on things people hate. In QA, if you ever dealt with QA, which is a whole fun space, and doing testing, right? End-to-end testing is very difficult because the UI changes, and now I got to change where my X paths are, and now I want to do this entirely by basically dictating what I want done and allow the AI to do it. So it's intent-based development. So now, instead of having to tell what to create or what to test, go add 5 items that are over 4 stars, under $50. Make sure they get out of the cart, ship them, make sure the shipping information works, and then calculate the pricing and make it work. That I would just tell it what to do.
Okay,
and now the system will reevaluate that every time. If the UI is the same, great, I can know where to click. If the UI has changed, I'll reevaluate and I'll come in like a human would and do those. So now I got to find new items. I got to figure out where their add buttons are. I got to go see where the cart is. But no longer should a human have to go and write very specific rules for that. And I can go on and on, but the point is for every one of those kind of modular things we've built, now we're building AI around each one of them.
Yeah.
And even when we make something easy, so I'll give you a really cool example. The whole platform, we put open policy agent on the entire platform. So everything you execute, anything you save, you can run a policy that says, can I do this or not, based on the variables that are there. We did that based on the entire, everyone in the industry saying, OPA is the thing to do. So we built it. And then we asked everybody, great, so now we built it with OPA. OPA's written in Rego. How many people do you have that know Rego at your company? And all these people that said we want to use OPA said, no one. So then what we built was generative AI to go, okay, well, let's make a generative AI actually be able to take human written word of what you policy you want and write the policies.
This is interesting. This is actually something that I feel like came up a while ago, strangely, I think, in the blockchain space, but never really got realized. Of the translating legal agreements into something, contracts as code, if you like. I don't know, whatever. This ability to actually codify all sorts of things. That's actually interesting. And the testing is an interesting one too. I've always been fascinated with trying to automate things with Selenium or Cypress or whatever. And it's so tedious, constantly trying to, especially with modern web frameworks.
And then as soon as somebody changes, it's dynamic. And then now my XPath doesn't work. So now think about the intent. Add something to the cart. I don't need to know. It'll go figure it out for you.
And it should be smart enough to find an add button from various signals.
And that's something like no engineer takes pride on brand new UI comes out and I have to go fix that. So if that's not an area where people love doing it, let's go disrupt that.
Interesting.
Even in your security, like aggregating, normalizing, deduplicating all of the outputs from all of your scanners and prioritizing them, it's a massive thing. So again, handle those things. So yes, we are always doing a massive amount in both generative and predictive AI. I will say that we don't AI to AI, like we don't AI wash everything. If it can be done with automation, we'll automate it. If it can be done with machine learning, right, we'll do it that way. If it requires advanced language models and it requires things, fine, we'll generate. But this is where I think we're particular, like use, square peg, square hole, like don't put round pegs in square holes, it doesn't work. Like use the tooling that's best that gets you the output without going overboard.
So final question, lots of interesting things you mentioned, but you mentioned a lot of very large companies. For someone who hasn't tried Harness before, who's interested in maybe taking a look, is there a free tier or a trial or something that
there's absolutely free tiers for it. We're actually even releasing, so in January, of our full Harness open source, which will be source code, CI, CD, cloud developer environments, and artifact registry, all in one bundle.
It's highly likely this interview won't come out until then. So this could be a good...
But on top of that, you can always use our free tier, which gives you full access for a certain amount of users. And then we also offer, startup pricing. And by the way, we sell to regulated industries. But we also sell to companies that don't necessarily have a CISO and don't have a massive DevOps team and like aren't staffed up for them. So in the startup space, it's actually quite easy because now you can just write a few rules and that CISO role is actually always applying them for you. So in the startup space, even in the AI space, so at our own conference, at Unscripted, our conference. Unscripted, that's our, it's a fun one. We did 6 of them globally. It was a phenomenal thing. But I had OpenAI come up on stage and talk about how they're using it to protect their workloads. They could use anything from Microsoft, but yet here's how they do it, audited, securely compliant, and they remove the toil from their engineers.
Cool. Thank you very much for your time.
Oh, genuinely, Chris, this was awesome. I really appreciate it. If ever opportunity, I'd be willing to come back.
So that was it. That was our guest today. Thank you very much for joining me in the Tech Lounge. I have been Christian Schiller. If you want to know more about Tech Lounge, head on over to christianschiller.com or please tell your friends about us. It's quiet and cozy in here, but the more listeners, the merrier. You can find more at christianschiller.com/podcast or in the show notes or episode notes, wherever you found this podcast. Thank you very much for joining me, and you're most welcome next time.